Samson, this is an interesting point, but to go back a little bit, there is a point that affects some of the commentary that we've heard about Napo, as well as what you said about me regarding money. Some of the comments that we've heard about him is that, oh, he's generous. And I recall that Bill Clinton once said, money is the mother's milk of politics. Let me begin by congratulating Napo on his nomination as running mate. It is a good thing that has happened to him. We should all wish him well. But having said that, I am troubled by what I have heard from the two gentlemen who are trying to defend him, Mr. Mercer and Kofi Benzel. Napo's charge of arrogance has echoes in the past. I remember, and I'll come down to that when I get to data, that, like you pointed out, this tag has been applied to Nana Addo, but long before Nana Addo, in 1979, it was applied to Victor Usu, and it was applied in relation to the Volta region too. The reason why I'm troubled is that I would have expected that Mr. Mercer and then Kofi Benzel would indeed acknowledge what most people are saying. Napo shouldn't have made the remarks that he made, both in relation to the Dumso timetable and in relation to the Keita Sea Defense Project. I am very sure that knowing Napo, and I've interacted with him a little bit, in his quiet moments, he would wish he had those words back. Those who want to support him must not try and pretend that those who are making these charges are ignorant. We are all complex people, and we all have faults. Those are some of the faults of Napo, but he does also have strengths. I think that those who seek and promote him will do very well, not just to tell us about his strengths, but to acknowledge that some of these things that he said and done, they were not done the best way possible, and that they would counsel him to do better. President comes from Apejafie. He was even president, and he served in government for longer. I never recall anybody describing President Kufuor as arrogant. So those who do support Napo and wish him well, I think should give him honest perspective so that as a person he can grow. I do not think that when you go and tell people to go and bring their own timetable, it is because of competence. Or when you say you demonstrate against the people of Keita and Manshia, that is because you know what you are talking about. You know, those things are false, and it gives me unpleasant echoes of listening to people here talk about Donald Trump when they like him. You know, they seem to gloss over all his faults. You can see his arrogance and bad manners clearly in front of you, and they'll be swearing that none of those things are true. So I think that the question of arrogance, for example, when you compare Napo to, say, President Kufuor, the contrast is very clear. But I think none of us is perfect. So those who want to defend him must not just defend him in public, they must counsel him in private and hope that he can grow. But I plead that none of us is perfect, and we'll never, like Kofi Benzel said, find a perfect person. So while
how much consideration should we have to temperament when it comes to looking for the first and second gentleman or lady, so to speak? Remember also that not too long ago, when the NPP went into its primaries, one of the things that were effectively used against Kennedy Japan, which many of us without any equivocation support, is that he doesn't have the temperament to be a president of this country. He's easily angered, He throws tantrums. He speaks about blackmailing. If he wants something he doesn't get, he gets on the radio and he starts insulting everybody and so on. So the same people who were against one of their own on the question of temperament can't seem to admit that Napo has an issue with his temperament. Even if he doesn't, that there's such an overwhelming, number of people in the country who think that is who he is, and a bit of an admission, and as you have just counseled, will be useful. What role should temperament play in deciding who becomes president or vice president?
It should play a big role, and I believe that, of course, arrogance or losing your head is situational. So yes, it matters, and I wouldn't go as far as Mr. Bentel to call what is obviously a flaw a strength. It is not a strength, but having said that, Napo have strengths. Like the deputy minister has pointed out, yes, he's hardworking. I disagreed with how free SHS was implemented, but I think that he worked very hard in trying to implement it. And on balance, he's been one of the best ministers of Nana Akufo-Addo, who, by the way, I am told had other candidates that he preferred. And talking about the arrogance that you talk about relating to Canada, Japan, this search for running mate and even before them for presidential candidate has had hypocrisy and inconsistency written all over it. I mean, there were a lot of people from Ashanti who didn't think an Ashanti deserved to be the presidential candidate just because he was an Ashanti, aka Alan. And all of a sudden, when it came to the search for running mate, they were insisting that an Ashanti deserved to be running mate. Try explaining to a simpleton like me why an Ashanti didn't deserve to be the presidential candidate, but he deserved to be a running mate. I still haven't been able to wrap my mind around it. But to come back to this, yes, indeed, temperament matters in being president and vice president. In even American history, there have been people who have bad temperaments who've been president, and sometimes it has worked. Andrew Jackson comes to mind, Donald Trump comes to mind. So I think, though, that those of us who watch politics hope that he grows. For example, a lot of people don't know, I worked with Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman when she was vice chancellor, and I was a physician in Cape Coast, and we had a famous clash that most people don't know about. But I still think on balance, she's a very substantive person and that she will make an excellent vice president. So I do not think we should look for perfection. I just think that those who like Napo should not gloss over these weaknesses because these are moments when maybe he can be cancelled. And by the way, I had the same view about Nana Akufo-Addo. I thought that a lot of people at least think he's a failed president and he's been arrogant and dictatorial in the MPP and is giving the MPP a bad name. Part of it is exactly what we are seeing today, that when he was a candidate and some of us were trying to shape his behavior and to counsel him about things that will lead him and his future government into trouble, there were a lot of sycophants who saw no faults. So I urge my friends to take on board what the public is saying. The public has wisdom.
All right.
And it all of us to be guided by the wisdom of the public.
Thank you very much. Now, Kofi, watch this.